Let's go.
We just go. Hey guys, welcome back to the Cryptoconomy Podcast. Today I am here with Jim Myers. He is the CTO of Flipside Crypto, and he's here to tell you a little bit about their plan to improve data and blockchain compatibility. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be on and share Flipside's story.
So I guess just to kick things off, if you could tell us a little bit about how you came to start that story, how you first became interested in crypto,
Yeah.
and what drew you to this particular segment.
Yeah. I started Flipside in 2017 with my co-founders, Dave Balter and Eric Stone. Dave, Eric, and I have worked together now for over 10 years, sort of always building companies and products at the intersection of data and community. There's sort of two things I would say from our background that really influence how we've developed Flipside. And the first is the power of leveraging a community to accomplish complex tasks. So this has kind of been a theme across companies from Smarter to Milestone and others. The second theme is really the power of incentives. And this is really kind of like what drew me into crypto, I think, in the first place. I come from a background in economics, and in microeconomics, you often are designing these experiments in a lab to elicit and test behaviors. And when I first started tinkering on top of Ethereum, I was fascinated by this idea of you could take a smart contract, essentially you're creating a game, and you could program human behavior and use the distributed nature of blockchain to tap into talent from all over the world to accomplish complex tasks together. So those sort of, that pulled me in and kept me really interested. And so those two themes, sort of community incentives, those are kind of at the core of our belief system and how we think about building companies and products and sort of pervade the platform that we've developed at Flipside.
So how did you go about finding the people you were going to work with and deciding, exactly which parts of the problem to tackle? Were you inspired by any companies at the time? Did you run into a few while you were playing around on Ethereum? Was there some divine inspiration there?
Yeah, I guess so. Ethereum, my first introduction to Ethereum was summer of 2015. Before it launched, there was a group of friends I had here in Boston, where I'm from, or where I live, and we used to get together and just tinker on various things. And that summer, Ethereum was hot, or the idea was, and so we were playing around with smart contracts and building there. But that was 2015, and we didn't start Flipside till 2017. So I kind of, had always kind of been watching it and playing with it as a hobby. And then, in 2017, and this might be probably the more unique origin story in crypto you might hear, but we were probably the furthest thing you could have been from crypto. We were sort of a year and a half into building a company in the death space, as in funerals, dying.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And building in that space, especially if you're trying to build a technology company, it was very difficult. It's a space that's not very receptive to new technology. And meanwhile, in the background, in 2017, the market was sort of getting more and more interesting day by day. And we noticed there really wasn't much of anything by data in that space. I remember at the time, most people were interested in Telegram chatter. People would say, is there any way to get a feed on which telegrams have the most chatter? And of course it was because there's all these ICO booms at the time. And so we sort of had this fundamental belief that given the unique properties of blockchain, probably more than most industries, data was going to be this sort of critical barrier, but also this major opportunity in growing the industry. And we thought any company that could be sort of provide the platform that would allow this industry to grow would accrue considerable value. So we started off at that time developing a technology we called chain walkers. And this, sort of became the kernel eventually for the company. And that enabled us to make blockchain data, human readable and usable. And then we developed an algorithm for sort of assessing the health of an ecosystem called FCAS. And we initially started using that to start trading for ourselves. And very quickly, we started forming these investment clubs with a bunch of investors and other people we knew. And those sort of overnight were very, very successful. And so that sort of brought this dilemma going back to kind of the beginning. The dilemma was sort of do we continue sort of grinding it out at Milestone, which was very difficult, or do we lean into the success we were having at Flipside? This was an incredibly tough decision. That question actually became the subject of a Harvard Business School case. So every
Okay.
fall we get to like have this very humbling experience of going to Harvard and like the students scrutinizing our decisions, which definitely correlates, I think, with the market when we're in a bear or a bull. But ultimately, we decided to shut down Milestone, and we returned the majority of capital to investors, and we pursued Flipside. And so, kind of looking back now, I think it's been 6.5 years. I think our original thesis still holds true. And, we're still building towards it, and we've had a lot of success since then.
So how would you say the product has evolved since inception? How are you working with more sources of data? Have you improved your methodology as to what data matters and what doesn't? Have you expanded into more, chains or more, inputs? I guess what has been your what have been your goals and what have been the milestones that you're sort of proud to have accomplished in that time?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the space moves so quickly. And I think, we started off, we built this tech of like, how do you look inside of a blockchain basically? And how do you understand what's going on, rich data? And so that's always been at the core. And then kind of how that's applied has changed. We started off doing investments and working mainly with the investment crowd. As we started doing that, what happened was more and more blockchains started understanding what we had. And this was really before any platforms existed. So, I mean, we ourselves didn't even have like a platform where you could go query data. It was kind of behind the scenes. And so we started, eventually over time, what happened was, is we decided, hey, like we're not really investment managers. We're not fund people. We're product builders. And so we, at one point we did have a fund and we shut that down and we kind of decided we are going to pursue building out this product for the blockchain industry, really like partnering with, when I say blockchain industry, I mean blockchains themselves, like partnering with the blockchains. And so we started doing that and providing them insights, mainly on growth decisions, like strategic decisions about like where they should invest, how they should grow. And what we found in the rapid nature of innovation in the space, we couldn't keep up with all of the requests and the demand. Like our team was small, so we could only be deep experts in so many different rabbit holes and know so much. So that's when we kind of took this bet that we could build an open platform, and then we could build out a community. Right? All the previous businesses we've built have had these big communities, and like we can build out a big community that can help us deliver insights on demand for our partners if we can open up this platform. And we made that bet in, I think it was 2020. 2019, late 2019. And so we've been building kind of that platform ever since. And, there's been a lot of kind of evolution to the data, but that kind of shifted us from being this in the background working with chains to thousands of people now contributing to these ecosystems.
So you've got, almost a decentralized, I guess, analyst network or data scientist network. So I guess how did you find that community? Were there certain criteria you were looking for? Are these people who've got a degree in data science?
Yeah.
Is it just sort of a meritocracy at some level? I guess how do you go about that?
Yeah, it is very much like a meritocracy in a sense, but it is, we started, I think about community building almost as like concentric rings. And so we started off with this group we call Cantina. And Cantina were like just elite groups of analysts that we knew. And some of them we recruited, we had been following, we kind of pulled into our community. Others were friends of friends that kind of came in. But these people were experts in various pockets of Web3 in crypto data, or came from, currently had Web 2 jobs and weren't in the industry full time and were experts in, say, data engineering or data analysis. We formed that group and then we did a lot of work. Kind of, we like to refer to it internally as like hand-to-hand combat. Like you're constantly messaging people. You're constantly, when there's an issue or someone wants to solve something, you're jumping on and helping them. So it's a lot of upfront work, but the idea being that eventually once you build that ring out, you can go to the next ring and you can develop like more and more of these rings to the point where like now our community, like is the most powerful sort of educational tool we have. If you come onto the platform and you want to get started, yes, we do these seminars and we have docs and we have videos and training, but like the most powerful thing you can do is join our Discord, ask a question, and then like you're guaranteed someone from our community is going to come in and help you. And so, it starts with a lot of like effort and hand-to-hand stuff. And then like, as that community grows, it sort of powers itself. It becomes this very interesting flywheel.
That's really neat. So could you maybe give us some examples of like what an output might be from one of these contributors? Like what is the end result for someone who might not really understand
Yeah.
what's being looked for at all?
Yeah. Yeah, we can think about this in a couple of ways because there's different personas on our platform, or maybe consumers of outputs, right? So we have our data studio product. So if you go to flipsidecrypto.xyz, we think about what we have there as our studio product. And so people can build dashboards. And so that's sort of a live feed we like to think about of what's happening in the space right now. I mean, the ledger issue happened yesterday, and then within hours, there was a whole dashboard reporting on what was occurring there.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it is very like people are monitoring the space. It's very reactive. And so, that's, what we have there. And then the other side of it is we have sort of a bunch of APIs that we've also built out, and people are building out, different products and stuff to support different ecosystems, which are a bit more specific. But these outputs are, if you think about, let's just focus on, say, dashboards for a second on Studio. There's a bunch of airdrop stuff happening right now in Solana. There's a frenzy of airdrop. So like some of the dashboards there allow you to sort of put in your address and monitor sort of what your activity has been, how much, you might be eligible for. Those dashboards go viral. They've like two of them in the past week have generated, hundreds of thousands of views individually. And within our site, they've been some of our biggest dashboards of all time. The other types
a lot of people looking for those dashboards, asking me where to find them, so I know where to send them now.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at like some of our view numbers, it's like it's just like so it's pretty cool to see sometimes when those dashboards go viral. And then the other thing is, a bit more, serious. What will happen is, so we partner, our primary customer are blockchains themselves. Foundations, the way the model works is they delegate large amounts of tokens to Flipside. Flipside has a team that are sort of experts in bare metal infrastructure, and we run validators in these ecosystems. Delegate to our nodes, that generates yield. That yield powers this open platform for everybody. Now, part of that yield we use to reward people for the work that they do. It's a big part of our belief system in how we built the company. And so in the background, what will happen is foundations will come to us. We have open, say, Slack channels with all of them. And every week they're coming and they have a list of questions, things they want to understand this week or analyze. And then we put them out to the community. We'll kind of seed them maybe to some of the different groups we have. Like I mentioned, Cantina is one. We have a bunch of others. And then those dashboards will get generated. Those are public. A lot of them appear within we have this program called Top 30, which rewards the top 30 dashboards on our site for every hour you spend in Top 30. A lot will be there. And then the foundations are going and using those to make decisions, product decisions, strategic decisions, or just day-to-day things they need to know.
So in order to work with you guys, do you have to have a foundation? So, I mean, could you work with like Bitcoin ordinals or some of these that are a little more scattered, a little less, structured, that maybe are like more truly decentralized, or is that just really not the focus at this moment?
Yeah, I mean, we have this kind of debate internally, like, do we work directly with protocols? Do we not? And for now, what we've decided is to really focus at the foundation level. And a lot of times, like if you look at Solana, right, like Solana is a big partner of ours. We've worked at the foundation level, but the delegation that we've received there also has funded a lot of the protocol work we've done. So we've gone deep with a lot of the different teams within Solana itself. And so we're not, we are very familiar with like how to work also with the individual protocols. I think it's, we haven't spent the time focusing on yet on what is the model there. Because it's a lot of work to do what we do in terms of, there's a lot of cost. There's a lot of hard data cost, infrastructure cost to power all of this. And so it's kind of just a question of like going after one foundation, one sort of relationship there versus like dozens of tiny relationships. So just, there, you have to make conscious choices about how you invest this business.
Yeah, I think that's the smart way to do it. That's certainly easier than chasing down all the people who are distributed all over the place.
Yeah. No, that could evolve.
And so,
yeah.
And so you mentioned the foundations give you, some incentives to pay out to users. Do you pay users out, in those native tokens? Do you guys have a token? And what can be done on platform with tokens, I guess, to be my own.
Yeah, good question. We do not have a token, but we do reward people in native tokens from our partners. So we actually built out a pretty powerful sort of payment. I mean, it's not really used for payments, but it's like essentially a payment platform that allows us to reward people through our platform in any of these various tokens that we're accumulating. So if you go onto our site and like, let's say you built some dashboards and one of the most popular sort of campaigns we run is just top 30. Any dashboard that for every hour you spend in our top 30, and there's an algorithm that we've built that identifies the top 30, you're getting rewarded for that. And then at any point in time, you can go onto the site and there's the earn section of our site and you can claim from those wallets, what you earned.
Nice. That's really interesting. And that's really neat that anyone can just kind of come in and start to contribute. I think that's what this stuff is all about. Do you guys see, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, do you guys see yourself having any major competitors? Is there anyone that, you compare yourselves to or other people might compare yourselves to help them get an idea, I guess, of, really what segment you might be competing against?
Yeah. I mean, I think the obvious one is we get compared to most data platforms out there, right? Like, and, Dune is an obvious one. There's others as well, Nansen, Covalent, right? Like any of the data platforms are all providing data. And so we think a lot about, how do we differentiate from those? I think, one of the most unique things about us is our business model. And so I like to think about like what that means from the perspective of the user of the platform. For one, it's, we do not think about, traditional SaaS model, right? You would think about, okay, like what's the journey of the average user on our platform and how do you move them up, these various funnels to get them to pay more. And so if you're a SaaS business, like that is driving kind of how you are thinking about building product. That's at the core sort of the belief system you're optimizing for. Our belief system is really that, analysts there should be a baseline of data that is always free. Because nodes, ironically, it's hard to access that data, even despite how open these networks are. But, the analysts should be rewarded for their work, and as opposed to being charged to just even engage. And so that plus how we've worked with foundations and the delegation model means that we can make product choices that optimize for the individual as opposed to optimizing for like how we might move them up and down between plans. If you're in that business, you're going to spend a lot of time on tweaking things that aren't necessarily, say, like building like amazing product features for the end user experience. So that's one way I think about the difference. And of course, there's on the data side to just get into a bit more specifics on product. We believe that some of the largest growth in terms of analysts in this space or builders in this space is going to come from Web 2. It's not going to be the Web 3 sort of echo chamber on Twitter that's just there today. And so we've intentionally designed our data for how, say, someone coming from a Web 2 world, coming from a Web 2 data world, would expect the data to be presented. We have a team that we've built out of some of the best like Web2 data engineers and analysts. And we've designed the data so that, for example, like you could go in and learn about how we structure swaps, and then you could go to any other blockchain that we bring in, and you don't have to relearn that. It's just the same exact scheme and the same exact table, and you can reuse it. You could create analysis from both. And so that's just like kind of one thing that we do where we're focused on, how do we make it really simple to get started? Because crypto data itself is already so daunting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's really interesting. Are there any like Web2 platforms that you've been trying to reference because you're like, we know they're familiar with this, so we want to, is it like a Bloomberg terminal? Is it, what sort of would be your closest reference, I guess, for the TradFi folks?
Yeah, I don't have like oh, we were trying to emulate that specific data product. But what I do think of is I do think of products that are like really good at optimizing for like small details that like add up to like be this amazing experience. And I think like a great example of that is Figma, which was acquired by Adobe. And we think often about how do we reduce friction for users. And so when we're deciding like, should we build this thing or should we not? It always comes back to like this list of like, okay, like what's going to reduce the most friction for users of our platform. And all of these sort of small things that you do add up. I think about it like you should never have to reach for a tool. Like it should be like if we're doing our job, that we've anticipated what tool you will need in the context in which you're operating in the product, and it's already there for you. And so we spend a lot of time understanding and researching with our users how they're building. Just even small things like you're writing a query and like, okay, well, if I have to like switch pages to like then go access or a dashboard or reference a previous query and then copy paste something, like you're spending a lot of time doing that. And if you think about some of our power users, they spend hundreds of hours a year on our product. And so that time adds up. We want almost nearly 100% of your time focused on trying to accomplish your goal, not like the product getting in the way. And so from a product, sort of design philosophy, we spend a lot of time thinking about what are Web2 companies that really exemplify that. And that is what we focus on.
Yeah, I think if you can just make the user experience easy enough, that's the best competitive advantage you can have in crypto and just make it simple so they don't get lost. Do you have any features in the pipeline or changes that you guys are excited to come out with, going forward in the next, few months? Or are you just sort of focused on improving the core offerings of what you got now?
So a couple things we have coming. So the one thing that we've done is, so I mentioned like how we work with foundations, and we have this, obviously our data platform. But what we also do with them is we've built out, we call them scored apps, and they've been white labeled. And so a lot of them are branded. You might not even know that they're a Flipside thing, but these various chains have them that we work with. And essentially what it is like, as a user, you can get scored based on your history of doing things across different chains, not just in one ecosystem. And then based on that, like you'll qualify for different types of, essentially think about them as quests. And so they're basically data-driven quests. And then you can do that task, and then you can get qualified for something else. The foundations view us not just as really a data platform, but as a growth platform. And so we use our data in a combination with these various scored apps to drive results for them, either in terms of users or certain types of high quality transactions. And so what we've been doing is we've been building these for a couple of years now. And so we are taking a lot of the learnings that we've had from these various, we think about them as like little satellite products all over, and we're consolidating them into one experience. And the team's been working on that, and that's going to launch in early January on the platform. So this is kind of just expanding ways in which people on the platform can earn, right? We have a lot of these various data-related earning campaigns, and so we're going to be incorporating more of those. And so a lot of the growth campaigns we run now will be available directly within the platform. So just another opportunity to reward people in the ecosystem.
And that's really interesting. So would you say that's almost like a crypto credit score? Or is that kind of the idea to like track trust of the users over time? Or would you say it's, not quite that?
I mean, kind of. It's It's especially relevant in the world of airdrops now. We've advised a couple
Yeah.
groups on airdrops, and we compare. We have some pretty good knowledge about what makes a good airdrop, what makes a bad airdrop, and
Yeah.
so that's in all of these airdrops are typically informed by the scoring system that we've built. And we have a lot of data to back up from our partnerships with the blockchains and the campaigns we've run about like what works, what doesn't in terms of how you incentivize users.
Could you tell us a little bit about what works and what doesn't?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's always I would think about it as it depends on the goal that you would like to drive. So some chains actually intentionally would like a lot of low quality maybe users but high activity. Other chains actually want to hone in on like certain types of personas of users, like people that have been active LPs on certain chains. Okay, we want to attract liquidity over to this chain. So like, how do we do that, right? So I think what doesn't always work is blanket airdropping to folks that maybe have just been in your ecosystem. So like, there's a lot of people that will engage in discords or just do a couple tasks, and then they get rewarded because they followed the rules. I think what we've seen work best is where it's aligned with what it is that you're hoping to drive. And so if you can like find those behaviors that have already existed on chain, like if you go back to the liquidity one, like people that have actively been LPs on other chains, you can use an airdrop to get their attention. And then ideally, then you can get them to move liquidity over to your chain and start participating there. So it's like rewarding the behaviors that you would like to see. Maybe not necessarily people that have even been active in your community, but people that have been exhibiting those behaviors, as opposed to just like giving tokens to people that happen to be around, because those users aren't always the ones that are actually going to drive the KPIs that they want to drive.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. Has there been any thought put into, uniqueness of users? 'Cause I feel like one thing I know, every one of my friends has 30 wallets that they're just signing up for every airdrop. So the KPIs for user numbers and, so on and so forth probably are often a
Yeah.
little skewed because of that.
Yep. A lot of our scoring algorithms take that into account in terms of like, it's not 100% accurate, right? Because it's using ML and stats to kind of infer what might be a single cluster, but you can get to a pretty high degree of accuracy with that. And so that helps alleviate some of this sort of issue, right? Like, I think myself, I have like dozens of wallets and half of them are like kind of like containing, I think about it as like dust just left over there. So like, how do you connect them back? But there's certain obvious patterns that you can use to infer that. And so the team does take some of that into account.
Is there any potential that you could use your system to find dust that you might have forgotten about years ago? I mean, I'm sure there's so much stuff I've got connected to me somehow, somewhere that I just don't remember.
Yeah, I'm sure you could. I mean, you definitely could on our platform today. We were having a conversation about this the other day around like liquidity, like in like if you think, like, we were like joking, like I wonder how much sort of dust is just sitting around that if you actually could aggregate it all up. I think on Ethereum I have certain wallets where like the price of the transaction to like move it like doesn't even make sense for me to like move it, but like so it just will sit there forever. It would be interesting if there was like a protocol that which you could like build that would apply that without maybe having to move it, but could kind of collect all that dust up.
Yeah.
Put it
And
to
it would
work.
tell you a lot about like actual circulating supply and stuff. Everyone's guessing how much Bitcoin is really out there, and no one knows.
Yeah. Um, that's interesting.
Yeah, I've had a bunch of buddies who've been asking me for that lately, and I'm like, I don't know anyone that does that, but I'm sure
We
someone will
do.
eventually, and a lot of people will be really happy.
We do have, for those interested in Bitcoin, we do have this. We are probably one of the only providers. I think there's one other out there we've heard it's charging a lot of money for it, but we have fully clustered Bitcoin data. And so what that means is like just by the nature of how UTXOs work, you have like inputs to transactions, you have outputs. And so fully clustered lets you look at all of those and see who is actually one identity. And so we've done that going back since the beginning of time. It's a really big sort of network engineering challenge. And so all of that is actually freely available on our site now. So you can do some pretty cool analysis with that. That is really hard to do if you don't have those identities mapped out.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Does that map to like ordinals and some of these other things that are actually being like printed on chain?
Yeah, you could find that in there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a need for that stuff. There's been a lot of work being done to put together that and not a lot of infrastructure there. So that's
Yeah, I
super
haven't
interesting to me
personally
personally.
done as much in ordinal, so I'm kind of thinking about it on the fly. But yeah, I think you could do that.
Yeah, you guys take a look. I think there's going to be a lot of movement there and Solana, I think. So when you're thinking about this stuff, I mean, at what point do you start getting serious about like approaching a new protocol that's just come to market? At what point
Mhm.
are they too green or are they interesting enough for you guys to
Yeah.
go take a look?
We like to get started as early as possible. Preferably like pre-testnet or even testnet launch. We've been in networks. So I mentioned if you think about what we provide, right? We provide infrastructure, we provide data, we provide growth. And so it really depends on the stage of where you're at, what we can provide in terms of these. And so we've worked with chains, like say as an example, like pre-testnet, where we were one of, I don't know, like maybe like a dozen people in the world that were like launching infrastructure. And so we have a lot of expertise in terms of like doing the whole ceremonies around launching these networks. And so we've been very helpful to folks in that launch. And then once we have that set up, our data team gets involved. We point our streamline technology, which is sort of our proprietary technology for taking this data in and formatting it. And we can do this very quickly. Like we just launched Aptos on our network, on our platform in about 4 days. So it did not take long for us to do it. But yeah, we'll get involved early. We'll do that. We'll get to know the community, the team, when we're involved early in infrastructure, and we'll bring the data in. And then at launch time, we'll help with a bunch of growth campaigns. And then those growth campaigns kind of continue depending on what are the things you want to highlight. And it's a mixture of, bringing people into your platform to hire or into your ecosystem to drive certain KPIs, and also delivering insights to you as well from our community.
So on like a more personal level, what does your research look like for crypto? You probably have to stay, pretty aware and you have to kind of know which companies are coming out and who you might want to partner with, going down the
Yeah,
line. So
yeah.
what's your process like?
Um, there's so many different rabbit holes, you can go down in this space. And so I find like it's hard for one individual to scale and say, okay, like I'm an expert in everything. And so we very intentionally like built out a team. We call it our ecosystem team. And we've hired different experts in each ecosystem. So we have people that are experts in EVM, people that are experts in Solana and various other ones, or Cosmos related chains. And then it's almost like a mixture of BD because they're building out relationships in all sorts of Telegram chats, Discord chats, kind of have their tentacles out there into like a pulse of what's going on. And then we have a process internally for how we bring that back. We have like if you think about like it's not a sales meeting, but like we have meetings every week where people kind of report back in what's happening, what's interesting to pursue and start looking at. And then we'll start very early, right? Like if it's a new chain that's launching, it's not even many people might not even know about at the time. We'll start trying to talk to the founding team about kind of how we can help support the ecosystem. Yeah, that's kind of the process. It's not enough for one person to do. You need a lot of people, and it started off with just a couple of us, but at this point, that whole group is, I think it's at least 15 people.
Well, you probably got a lot of good analysts to choose from in your line of work. Is there anything in particular, any projects, maybe ones you might not be working with, maybe just have heard about or have followed that you're excited about in particular that you think are doing things that are important to the industry generally?
Yeah, that's a good one. I would say there's like several themes that stand out, and I
Sure.
think like different projects have like elements of these themes, but not everyone's all the way there yet. But I think a big one is account abstraction stuff, and it's a very popular topic. But I saw a tweet the other day. I thought it was kind of funny that was talking about like how when you click like on this tweet, you're not thinking about the like 0.00001 cent that Twitter had to send to Amazon. And so, there's a lot of in this space, I think, that can be done to get us closer to that. I'm not convinced that like the end all be all of crypto is everyone connecting a wallet to have to interact with a service. There's ways to get at the benefits of crypto, kind of what it offers, without having to make every single, user be a technical security expert. And so, I think there's examples of people that are getting closer to that. We work closely with the Flow Foundation, and there have been a number of projects that have launched on Flow that have kind of started with this dual model. You can engage on top of Flow without even like having, in some of these things like NBA Top Shot and others, like without actually having to interface with a wallet. And then if you want to, you can then opt into the ecosystem. And so, we've also talked to a bunch of big brands that are leaning heavily into that space, particularly around reward systems, and thinking about, how we can use some of the incentives that this space has had a lot of success with in building reward platforms. So big brands are thinking a lot about this, and many of those are not going to be, having users have to connect wallets to engage if they want to use it, at least to start. So I think a lot about that. I think the other piece is there's this sort of ongoing debate, I think, about like L2s and different L2 technologies, and we have this debate internally, my co-founder Eric and I, about like is it ultimately like a multi-chain world of all these app chains, or is there sort of like just a few chains? And the thing Eric came up with, which I thought was clever and hilarious, is that blockchains are supermarkets that have sports teams with banks attached. And if you think about it, like like a supermarket, you get all of your kind of basics there. Your food, your sustenance. A blockchain, like ideally, like it's the foundation of kind of everything that we're building. And sports teams, like there's a lot of loyalty to a lot of these chains, which is a really hard thing to escape. And they're all ultimately banks too. So I think that loyalty drives a lot of kind of how some of these chains stick around. And so it'll be interesting to see how that evolves.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. I think at the end of the day, it's all about community and driving people where you want them and incentivizing them to do it in a way that gets them excited. And I think you guys have built a pretty good mousetrap for that. So that's all the questions I have for you today. But if someone would like to join your community or learn more, where can they do that? What's the best way to start getting involved?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing, head over to flipsidecrypto.xyz and you can sign up there. There's also links to our GitHub, our docs, to our Discord. And and the second thing I would say is join our Discord, which is linked to from our site. It's a great way to kind of get immersed. And there's lots of folks there that can help you get started.
Awesome. And I'll put all those links in the episode description so you guys can click over. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. We'll try to have you back on sometime soon to get an update. And until then, thank you for listening, and we will be back soon with another episode.